Welcome to another conversation with Charlie Lutes. Charlie is a well-known teacher of the Transcendental Meditation program, and he's traveled all throughout the world with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. Charlie, today we're going to be talking about a little bit about the history of the movement. All of our shows have dealt with more or less philosophical topics, but today we're going to leave that behind us a little bit and talk about your experience from the very inception of the Transcendental Meditation movement. Now, maybe we could start by just asking you how you got involved in TM.
Well, of course, everything has a history, and this movement has a history. I became involved in Transcendental Meditation because inadvertently I heard that the fact that Maharishi was coming to Los Angeles and was going to give a lecture at the Maskers Club in Hollywood. And to be very brief, I attended the lecture. And that was the first lecture that he had given, that he gave in Los Angeles. So I think it was 2 days later that I started meditation.
Well, what was it that drew you to that lecture? I mean, I'm sure there were many people who, it wouldn't have even entered their minds to have gone to a lecture by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. At that time, I would imagine no one had really heard of him.
Well, it didn't particularly enter my mind, but it entered my wife Helen's mind. That's whose mind it entered.
Yeah.
So there was this German scientist had this little clipping of Maharishi, and he was showing it to Helen. She said, "Oh, he looks very interesting." And she said, "I'd like to go hear him." The German scientist said, "Well, I'd like to go hear him too." I said, "Then why don't the two of you go?" So she said, "Well, we plan to, but it won't hurt you to go either." So that's how I went, really.
Did you offer any resistance to this idea at first, or did you immediately say, "Sure, I'll go"?
No, as soon as I heard Maharishi, and as soon as I listened to him for a little while, I realized he had something that was very unique, and he had something that offered a solution, at least to what I felt were my problems, here and now.
Yeah.
I had a lot of tension. Of course, I've been in corporate structure most all of my life, and the one thing that's indigenous to corporate life is tension.
Tension and stress.
And I had plenty of it. I had a tremendous amount of it. And I'd been made very aware of it because ever so often we had to take examinations for insurance for the company. And I couldn't pass insurance. So they said, "Gee, you're going to have to do something." And so I talked to Maharishi about this after the lecture. I said, "Well, if I start to meditate, will I lose this tension?" He said, "Yes, you'll lose it." And I said, "Fine." That was enough incentive for me at that point, was to start meditation. Although I had lots of other interests in what Maharishi was talking about other than just tension. But that was the immediate thing.
Right.
And sure enough, when I started to meditate, in 3 months my tension was gone. I took an examination with the insurance company and didn't believe it was the same person.
Was the focus of his presentation that night on TM as something used to get rid of stress, or was there a different focus on what he was talking about?
Oh, his focus that night was simply on life in general. And the fact that in society we were subject to a great deal of stress and a great deal of tension, and Transcendental Meditation offered a very immediate way of releasing this.
Right.
This was part of it. I mean, it certainly wasn't all of it, but it covered quite a wide range. And but this was the part that I heard. Of course, the thing that affects you personally, that's what you hear,
Yeah.
Probably Helen didn't pay attention to that, but
Right.
she heard something else. I don't know what the German scientist heard.
Well, so you started basically after Maharishi's one of his first public lectures in the United States. Now,
Yes.
Now I know that he didn't come directly to Los Angeles. Maybe you could just go back a little bit before you were even involved and give us a little bit of a history of how Maharishi got to L.A.
Well, actually, he started in Madras. And from there, due to, I would say, encouragement of an American and the help of an American, went to Hawaii. And he stopped in Hawaii for a short while. And there he met a contractor's wife who encouraged him to come to San Francisco. In fact, sponsored him. And she was going to San Francisco because her husband was there, but their headquarters was in Los Angeles. So they stopped in San Francisco for a short while.
Now, we have a slide here that we can show briefly of Maharishi in San Francisco. You can see the Golden Gate Bridge in the background there. So his real first stop in the United States was
San Francisco. But he came to Los Angeles, and it was in Los Angeles actually where the movement was born.
Right.
And while he was in Los Angeles, he made numerous trips. I would say numerous. He made a few trips to San Francisco, where he set up the movement there.
Right. So he
an
was
organization there.
He was pretty much working in those days with small lectures and through contacts. One person telling other people that might be interested in what he would have to say. And
well, we didn't stop there. Of course, we utilized all the media that we could garner at that point, newspapers and radio and whatever we could come up with. Certainly word of mouth, this sort of thing. But we did advertise, yes we did, as much as we were able to.
We have another slide of a trip to San Diego. Maybe you'd like to tell us a little bit about this slide. It looks as though it wasn't all work that you were involved in.
No, he'd heard a great deal about the San Diego Zoo and the beauty of San Diego in general. So one weekend we just simply went to San Diego. And he did go through the zoo and certainly enjoyed it very much. But the real reason for going to San Diego wasn't ostensibly just to be in the zoo. Right. It was to make preparations and plans whereby we could go to San Diego and he could offer transcendental meditation there in a public lecture, which we did set up at the hotel for him.
Me, in my brief contact with Maharishi, and this must have impressed you too in your long period of knowing him, was that even when there's a lot of work, and there always seems to be work going on, there's always time to have a good time somehow. It's always fun.
It's never drudgery, never was. We were certainly concerned with what we were doing, but Maharishi enjoys life and enjoys seeing things and getting around a bit, traveling here and there. And, he takes a great interest in these things. He still does, as a matter of fact.
It's true. But in terms of the development of the movement, I think we have a slide now that just indicates one of the first lectures that was given by Maharishi in the LA area. Maybe you'd like to tell us a little bit about this.
That was the first, I would say, large lecture that was given to first lecture to a large audience, let's put it that way. And we set this up at the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium.
Right here in Santa Monica.
In Santa Monica. And it was given as wide advertising as was possible. And he had a tremendous turnout, yes.
And was it always with the intention of having people start TM after the lecture? Was that it? That they were essentially introductory lectures?
That was the object. The object was simply to introduce transcendental meditation to the public and certainly bring as many into transcendental meditation as were interested.
This is one of the unique things, I think, in terms of the history of Maharishi, is that a lot of people have come to talk about philosophy and to talk about the nature and the meaning and the purpose of life and to give inspiration to higher levels of awareness. But not many people have come with a very simple technique that people can actually practice at home regularly.
Well, the thing that was appealing at that time in relation to transcendental meditation was something that you could do at home, and it was effective here and now. You didn't have to renounce, you might say, your life of activity and find a cave someplace or become a renunciate or something else. Simply just function in life as you always had, except something was added to your daily life, as he said. Now something has been added to your daily life. We don't plan to alter or change your life, he said. Simply, we're going to give you something to reinforce your life.
Now there must have been some basic beginnings to the actual TM organization. Up to this point, it was Maharishi giving lectures and doing instruction, and he instructed a number of people personally. But there must have been some meeting, and I suppose it had something to do with Sequoia. Is that right? I think we have a slide that you brought along of Sequoia.
Well, it became quite clear that in order to have anything work systematically, there had to be some sort of an organization.
Right.
And someone responsible for certain activities. And I would say that Maharishi, though he wasn't organizational minded, it was more or less impinged upon him.
Yeah.
And true, we did form an organization,
and
Spiritual Generation Movement Foundation of America.
Right, SRM. And this was actually the first organizational meeting for this group took place in Sequoia National Park. Is that right?
That's where the whole concept, I might say, was brought together in relationship to what was needed in the way of an organization and what type of organization this would be. Of course, there were some meditators who were attorneys and one thing and another who would offer different suggestions, but I think this is where it was more or less brought together.
I think we have a picture of this first meeting under the giant trees in Sequoia National Park. And that we could say is really the foundation or the development of the spiritual regeneration movement, SRM, which is now one of a number of organizations around the teachings. But that was a weekend that was
the first organization that was ever founded in this movement in the whole world. Now, they came from San Francisco, some came over from Hawaii and Los Angeles to attend this particular meeting that was held in Sequoia.
Was there anything, any general characteristic about the group of people that came? Were they young, or were they older? Were they established in life, or were they...
Most all of them were pretty well established. I would say in the beginning, all of us held jobs of responsibility to one degree or another. This was typical of the movement at that time. We all had jobs. We all had our daily activity, so to speak, and this is what we were doing, you might say, is a avocation rather than, or dedication rather than a vocation.
And then after that, through SRM, actual courses where people went and spent time in a systematic way with Maharishi, gaining instruction and gaining further intellectual knowledge, were held. Where were the first courses held?
Well, the first course ever given was held in Catalina Island.
Right off of L.A., right here.
We were talking one time about Catalina Island, and it was suggested that sometime just as a daily, or as an outing for some particular day, we should go to Catalina. So we arranged this, and to Catalina we went. And while we were there, we walked over to the St. Catherine Hotel.
Well, now, wait a minute. I think we have a slide of you and Maharishi actually on the boat on the way over to Catalina. Oh, wait a second. That's that slide. Bill, can you back up one? Can we back up? There we go. Okay, can we get a shot of that?
That was on the boat. Maharishi was up on the bridge visiting with the captain. The captain brought him on the bridge and let him hold the helm for a little bit and this sort of thing. And he really enjoyed it.
And then that next shot was the shot of when the group actually landed on Catalina.
That was the first group that attended the course that was given at Catalina Island.
Right. Bill, can you switch that on again? That shot that's on now?
Yeah, this is the group.
So this is where you're arriving. All right. And so you spent, what, a weekend there?
Oh, no. We spent 2 weeks there.
Oh, 2 weeks. That was
but while we were in Catalina, I looked up the manager of the hotel, the St. Catherine Hotel, and asked him what the possibility was for holding like a 2-week course there.
Right.
And he said it was very good. So with that, we began to work out the details, which we did.
And we have a group picture of that course, and maybe as we go to the break, we can put that slide on. And we'll take a break now, and we'll come back and continue this interesting talk on the history of the movement.
Yeah, that's the first one.
So, Charlie, we now had the first residence course right here in Catalina that was held. And after this, there were some other, major things that happened in terms of the history of the movement. The first really is the trip to Canada, isn't it? Where the organization was also established there.
Well, the idea was to visit as many cities along the Pacific coast. We set up a tour for the Maharishi. And the culmination of the tour was to be in Vancouver, Canada.
Right.
And so we visited all the cities along the way, and also coming back. And we had to set this up so that the hotels were arranged and the lecture halls were arranged and the media had already been contacted and the notices and so forth had gone out. Everything was very well arranged. It was done actually by a professional organization, public relations people. And they did a very good job of it. So I drove him up there actually.
Well, we have some shots of you going, of the trip going up there. Maybe, Bill, we can switch to this shot. This is where? someplace in Oregon, I think you said?
That's along the way. I think that's Shasta Dam, if I remember correctly.
Mount Shasta.
It's close to Mount Shasta.
Uh-huh.
We stopped off there. We were driving along the road, and I said, over to this direction, I said, the Shasta Dam. And he said, why not we go visit it? And I said, that's 50 miles over there. And he said, nice little side trip. So
yeah.
We went over to see
off
it.
You
Missed
went.
the picture.
Uh-huh.
But
and then I think we have another shot of you crossing the Sound. Now
this is when we
there
went,
you are.
This is when we went from Seattle actually to Victoria.
Uh-huh.
And we went over on the boat. We had to go part of the way, of course, by water to get over to Victoria. But there again, we had a very interesting lecture there in Victoria. And quite a few people were interested.
Uh-huh.
In Canada, we found greater receptivity than we found anywhere in the United States.
No kidding.
Greater.
And the Canada movement, the Canadian movement now, of course, is very strong in terms of the...
It's very strong, yes.
I think we have another shot of Maharishi there with some scenery above the Sound.
I think looking down on Puget Sound there. That was in Vancouver, or in that area.
Uh-huh.
No, we had a great deal of interest in Vancouver. Quite a bit more than we anticipated, we had expected.
So the movement now is established really on an international basis in terms of the interest in the West Coast cities and so on. Another thing I wanted to get to is Maharishi's first book. And I want to read something, Charlie, and ask you to comment on these words. This is a book of revival for the age. If the golden era is ever to dawn on human society, if peace and harmony are to reign on earth, the science of being and art of living will provide a free way for it to come. A new humanity will be born, fuller in conception and richer in experience and accomplishments in all fields. Joy of life will belong to every man, love will dominate human society, truth and virtue will reign in the world, peace on earth will be permanent, and all will live in fulfillment, in fullness of life, in God consciousness. These words sound familiar to you?
Sound familiar to me, yes. I think that was a preface that I wrote for the Science of Being and Art of Living.
That's right.
But this is the mark of the New Age, and this is the mark of actually transcendental meditation.
And Maharishi's first book was written in, I think you said he started in Tahoe, and I think we have a shot of Maharishi at Lake Tahoe.
Actually in Lake Tahoe. That's where we first worked on it.
This is a very meditative pose here.
He loved it at Lake Tahoe. Said it was very, very beautiful. One of the most beautiful places on earth, actually. Mm-hmm. And he's always enjoyed Tahoe, wherever he's been.
But then I guess in order to be a little closer to you, who you were helping with him and all, working on the book, they moved to Arrowhead, Lake Arrowhead.
Yes, he moved down to Lake Arrowhead. We were able to secure for him some accommodations at Lake Arrowhead, right on the lake, so that he spent, I think, most of the winter up there, as I recall, late fall till spring.
Working on the science of being and art of living.
That's exactly what he was working on. I used to go up each weekend, spend each weekend with him, and then hurry back down to Los Angeles and go to work on Monday morning. But it was very enjoyable, and it was closer, yes, not only closer to where I live, but closer to a lot of other things also that were needed at that particular time.
Well, certainly this made a big difference. I remember reading, having something that Maharishi wrote, the knowledge contained in a book that could be available generally to people. It must have made a big difference in terms of the development, the growth of the movement.
It had a very definite impact, yes, certainly. This is the so-called, you might say, the key to what was being taught and the unfoldment of the work that Maharishi was projecting here in the United States and throughout the world.
It must have been a huge honor for you, Charlie, personally, a great thrill to participate in that event of the publication of this book.
Yes, very much so. Yes, sure.
Okay, then we go to India. And there were some courses that began to be held actually in India, where groups of people here went to Maharishi to become teachers, the first teachers of the Age of Enlightenment.
Well, I might say this, that we were in Rio de Janeiro. We did a trip of South America, and we did every country in South America and every major city in South America. That was quite a trip. That was a hard trip and a fast trip, but we did accomplish what we set out to do. And it was in Rio de Janeiro, where in 3 days and 3 nights, Maharishi inducted into Transcendental Meditation over 1,000 Brazilians. And it was at that point he said, now I must multiply myself.
Make teachers.
And his terminology was, I must multiply myself, which meant simply to make teachers of Transcendental Meditations, Transcendental Meditation, who would teach it exactly the way that he taught it.
And so these first courses, I think we have some slides of some of the participants of some of the first teacher training courses. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about this slide, Charlie.
That was a slide taken in India, as you can well tell. That was in Kashmir. I can tell by the dress of the natives there.
It was sort of cold.
It was cool there too, believe me. But that was our first trip into Kashmir.
And there's our illustrious president and general manager of KSCI there to Maharishi's right, Walter Coate.
That's Walter.
Okay, great. And we have some other slides. Maybe, Bill, can we go to the next one? This is the guest house, you said?
That's the guest house right next to, right next to Maharishi's house. That's the one I occupied. That's why the picture was taken of it. I spent quite a bit of time there. But, you know, it was right on the banks of the Ganges, right on the bank of the Ganges, and you just right down at the river. It was very, very nice.
And this is northern India, in the foothills, really, of the Himalayas.
Right in the foothills of the Himalayas, yes. Right where the Ganges empties into the plains of India.
And this is a shot?
That's a shot of Maharishi's portico or porch on his house.
Right, and it's looking out over the academy grounds.
It's a very nice place, too, incidentally. Very well done.
I imagine it's changed quite a bit over the years, but that was the very beginning of the academy there.
Of the academy in India, at Rishikesh.
We have another shot of the Ganges, I think it is.
Oh, that's Maharishi on the banks of the Ganges, yes. There was a particular day there when we went down to the Ganges, and Maharishi bathed in the Ganges. It had a certain meaning to them. Didn't have a whole lot of, we didn't understand too much about it, but...
but traditionally the Ganges is considered a very holy river, and and people relate to it in a very intimate way as a part of nature. Okay, and then we have another picture, I think, of you and Maharishi again in Kashmir.
Yes, this was way up above Kashmir. We were way up in the Himalayas, way up in the mountains there, way up in the snow, as you can tell by the way we're dressed. It was a very enjoyable trip. We took this way back into the, as I say, into the Himalayas.
Great, okay. So
we go on Mongolian ponies, I remember that. It's about the same as riding a sawhorse. In fact, I felt embarrassed. I felt like I should be carrying the pony.
Yeah, because they're real small.
Yeah, little small ponies, and the real razorback ponies. And they're real rough to ride, but and I kept thinking, gee, I ought to be carrying this pony, but he did all right.
Okay, and then we have a few more shots of different world scenes. I think this next shot is a shot in Panama.
That's in Panama. We only stopped there for a few minutes. That's the plane we came in on. That's the plane we left on.
So you didn't do any organization in terms of the Panamanian movement or anything like that?
No, we just stayed there for just a few minutes, actually, a couple hours, and then we left. Okay,
and then I think we have another shot of, where is this?
That's in Bogota, Colombia.
Yeah, Colombia.
That's overlooking Bogota. We spent several days in Bogota, and we set up the movement there. Of course, this is part of our tour of South America.
That you referred to earlier. It's a little out of sequence
Every city we went to, we set up the movement in that particular city. And incidentally, that movement has functioned and flourished in each city since that time.
Yeah, it's true.
I've gone back there since with Maharishi on a couple of trips, and I've been back by myself a couple of times.
And it is a completely worldwide move. We have a couple of shots from Japan.
That was our initial visit to Japan, yes. We were sponsored there, and we went under sponsorship, which we like to do.
Right. I think we have a picture of the sponsors. That's the next shot. The actual people that sponsored the trip.
This is the lady there in white, yes. She is the Japanese lady that did sponsor us.
And then, of course, as the public interest grew, Maharishi became more and more a public figure. I think our next shot is an indication of that.
Well, he was becoming better known, certainly all the time, every day. This is the Los Angeles Press Club, yes. He was interviewed by the press. And it was a very interesting interview, incidentally. And I think a very productive one, as I remember.
Now, up till now, we've seen Maharishi alone or with a group of very close friends and so on. But it doesn't really reflect by this time the tremendous expansion of the movement.
Well, the movement was growing everywhere, in the whole world, actually.
I think our next slide really shows, gives us a perspective on what was happening. Now, this is a shot of Maharishi with with one of the teacher training courses that took place where in La Antilla, I think.
In Spain, I believe, was it not?
Spain, right? La Antilla, Spain.
We had other courses. Our first large course, I think, was at Estes Park in Colorado. Then we went from there to Mallorca, but the facilities weren't enough, and we moved to Spain because more and more and more were coming.
It was just
And we
incredible.
had that tremendous accommodation.
Tremendous growth that
Yes.
was taking place. Okay, and so we've come a long way now. We've come from the very intimate, very
We've come from a
easy-
nucleus, you might say, of 50 meditators,
Right.
to now where the sun never sets on the head of a
It's
meditator
really
worldwide.
True. It's really true. And I really want to thank you, Charlie, for giving us this very fast, this very rapid view of the history of the movement. We didn't actually finish it up, but next time maybe we can get in, or
It's been
some
a
other
capsulization, I would
Right.
say, of the beginning of the movement.
We'll get
more or
into the more recent developments. So
less, which are quite something now.
that's right. This has been another conversation with Charlie Lutes, and thank you for watching.
Thank you.